Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Justin the Food Entrepreneur Show. I'm Justin Bizzarro. I'm your host. That's Bizzarro. For anyone who's out there, you can find us on Instagram at Justin the Food Entrepreneurs or at Justin Bizzarro. If you like the show or the other shows we do, which is the Centurion Leadership Battalion and the Justin and Ryan Bizzarro Show, those are available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, as well, or wherever else you grow yourself through podcasts. So they are syndicated just like Justin the Food Entrepreneurs are. So with that being said, I have a very special guest with us. His name is Dan Rossi. He is the New York Hot Dog King. He does have a book. It is called The New York Hot Dog King, From Rags to Riches to Less Than Rags. I've read the excerpts. I did order the book, everyone. I am excited to read it. This is life stories. It's also what this podcast is about. So seeing someone in food, seeing someone else go through life's journeys and ups and downs and still, write about it. So to give us hope, I think is an amazing thing. So Dan, how are you?
I'm doing great, Justin.
And in case the audience didn't know, by the name New York Hot Dog King, he does come from New York City. I don't know if originally, but, Dan, tell us your story. I mean, your history, your life a little bit leading up to writing the book and, doing hot dogs and sort of all of that. And I'll ask questions in between for sure.
Sure. Well, I am New York. I was raised in the Bronx. And I was raised, my time was the Vietnam era. And I joined the Marines. I did a couple of tours in Vietnam. I came out. I actually went into a sheet metal apprenticeship program. And I stayed in the trade for about 7 years until a friend of the family asked me to build them a hot dog cart. And I went ahead and I never really looked at a hot dog cart, to be honest. But when I did, it didn't take much to build one. And that led me on to building carts. 10 years later, I had built myself up to be the largest vending company in the history of New York City. I had 500 push carts on the street. Wow. But my background being a veteran, and I always supported our vets, especially Vietnam vets, we really got a really, really hard time when we came home from everyone. So, I had my employees were Vietnam vets, and a guy named Donald Trump attacked them and had them removed from Midtown Manhattan as vendors. And it took me a while, but when I finally realized what was going on, I kind of reversed it and got the veterans back on the street. And I was told by the top people in the government, in the city government and state, that I had to be punished for doing such a thing. So they took away my business. There you go. And his friend, Rudy Giuliani, helped him quite a bit. And you make enemies with powerful people, things happen. So when all the dust cleared and everything happened, and, here's where the less than rags comes in. I lost my home. I lost my whatever property I owned. My wife and I ended up living in a van. And that from a 6-acre estate in Greenwich, Connecticut is some fall because Greenwich is one of the richest areas in the country. So that happened. And then I get a phone call from another veteran who's in trouble. And he's vending in front of the Metropolitan Museum of Art. I go and I said, I can't help this guy. I'm as low as you can go, but I'm going to go anyway, see if I can help him. Because he was a Vietnam vet who was really, really troubled. And I went, and then one thing led to another. I said, you know what? I got one permit that they left me with out of almost 500. And why not sell hot dogs? I had nothing to lose. We had nothing. I had nowhere to go. Like I said, we were living out of a van. And I went ahead and had to actually borrow a cart that I built for somebody. And I set it up near the museum. And naturally, I got harassed and all this. And after a while, I ended up directly in front of the museum. Got arrested, all kinds of nonsense that they tried to pull on me. But all of that brought a lot of notoriety to me. And people started to see what was going on because I was always in the newspapers. And then we had first an outfit, Munchies, on Vice Media. They did something on me. If that thing went to something else and to something else. And then a young man who does what's called Humans of New York put out a book, and he's got, just one pages on people. And when mine came out, it was just like a circus. in front of the Met. There were hundreds and hundreds of people
That's
who
incredible.
came. It was unbelievable. You had no idea how unbelievable. I said, "What's going on here?" You know. And then one thing led to another. I mean, PBS, Netflix, everything came out with me. So now back up on top. Even though I'm just a hot dog vendor, if you want to call it on top, but I'm there. The downside of it is for me to hold the location, I have to sleep there at night. So for the past 12 years, that's where I've been every night. Maybe a few, holidays I'll come home, but basically that's it. But it's what I did, Not only while I was there, the city was what they were doing to keep the veterans down. They were denying them the right to sell food. And I took it to court and I got all the disabled vets the right to get permits to sell food. So I did quite a bit for these men and women. So that's it. And there's a short version of it. If you read the book, I mean, it only gives a fraction of the fighting that I had to do. I mean, I was in 3 different courts at the same time. I mean, they just drained me of anything I had, That's the game that they play. And even when you win, you lose.
That is the game they play, and a lot of disinformation and a lot of harassment and a lot of tearing down character and reputation, or attempting to. But often what happens in that case is people focus on you thinking they're going to look at something and see this horrible human or horrible situation. And the reality is they see something different, and it makes a world of difference. Talk to me about, go ahead.
I have to tell you, Giuliani did his best. What you have to understand is I'm Italian American. And Giuliani is the guy who was at the time was going after the mob. And I'm Italian American. How can you be successful if you're not connected to the mob in his mind? So that's what he tried to use on me. And I said, well, you can come at me all you want, but there's no connections to anything but my wife and my kids, and that's it. And that was the problem. They couldn't find anything I was doing wrong, so they just kept inventing stuff. And they didn't have to come and say it loud. They just had to whisper it. And then they started to buy off the politicians one by one until they passed the law and put me out of business. It's exactly right. You're right. They turn you into the bad guy. They discredit everything you do. And, they win because they have the voice of the media. Then guys like you now, that's kind of changing. You can say anything you want about me, but I'm right here. You have to say it to my face,
Yeah, exactly.
And that's the part that they can't do. So, but that was yesterday, now we're trying to rebuild and get back on our feet and but I've always done everything right, as far as legally and everything. And that's a hard thing to do in the vending industry to stay successful. I can't find 5 other guys that are like me in the city. So that's how bad it is. I mean, the whole vending industry is in the sewer. The last mayor and the mayor we have now, they really did a bad job. I mean, it's really garbage out there now. And I have to compete against maybe a dozen illegal vendors right next to me. And if the health department came to inspect, they come right to me and they don't go to them. I mean, it's just a joke,
It's an interesting thing. I think New York City forgot what cleaned up New York City in the first place and made it almost an emerald city for probably 2-3 decades. I lived there during that time and did all the New York City hospitals food for, 19 years. And I didn't do the employees that worked for our companies did. But the thing is, you take care of the small little things, the jumping the subway lines, not paying for a subway fee, vendors illegally vending. Those are the things that cleaned up New York City. There's ways to do it legally. There's ways to do it. And taking care of the small things ultimately took care of the big crimes. Lots of people have written about this, Malcolm Gladwell, as well as other people, and I think it's called the broken window theory. There's someone who actually created the idea behind it in terms of urban development. But it's what happened. We lost track of that. We started focusing on, I don't even know what in New York City. I'm still a little bit confused what the priority is there. But versus the development and the growth through keeping everyone safe. As long as everyone's safe and everyone feels safe and everyone can ride the subway and vendors can do business and businesses are protected to conduct businesses, are not being shut down for conducting business, that are doing it correctly, then urban environments thrive. Without it, they do not.
You know, you hit it right on the button. You know, I'll be honest with you. When Giuliani came in, he didn't create it. And one of his commissioners created the concept: if you go after lower crimes, that takes care of the bigger crimes, and it worked. And he took credit for it, but he went overboard. I mean, he was doing things that were just dishonest. He was just doing things to get his name in the paper, you know. And he was also doing things to get favor of very powerful people in the city, like Donald Trump. People, you know. And he worked hand in hand with Donald Trump to get rid of me, because when it comes to my little part of the world, the veteran end of it and vending, I'm the key. And they continue to today to try and get rid of me. Because once they do that, then the veteran vendors will just be other vendors. They won't have any kind of privilege. They'll lose all that. And, you know, so you're right. They did clean up, but things, he went crazy overboard. I mean, they were picking up tricycles because they didn't have little bells on them. That's how nuts this guy went, you know. But, you know, it worked to a point. But now with the vending industry, once he took away the permits from me and the companies, then he turned around and made the black market walk in and take it to save face, because he knew he screwed up. See, for them what I did was I challenged them. I said, look, if you see that I'm doing something intentionally wrong, if I'm not going by the guidelines that I sat down with the lawyers of the city and they laid out to me, if I'm not doing that, I said, I'll walk away from the industry. I'll give up everything I own, but you leave the other companies alone, you know? And they couldn't do it. I was the most legitimate company in the city. So they went ahead and took the permits away from the other companies, gave them back in different names, but there was a lapse between the time they did it. So it gave the black market people, with the support of the mayor, you have to forget this part. He knew they were working illegally, and he supported them and protected them. And once they came in, that was it. Now, what do you do? And today, right now, the city's going to, if you're an illegal vendor right now in New York City, the health enforcement people are told to walk by them and don't even look at them. So if you're not licensed or permitted, you have nothing to worry about in New York City. But if you're licensed and permitted, you're doing it the right way, now you've got problems. Because they'll walk by the guy right next to them who's got no permanent license, and they'll come to me, and they'll try and make a quota on tickets or nonsense. And why should we be putting up with this? And this was all created by Rudy Giuliani. The other mayors, once it happened, they could care less what happened. They really never put any time into the vending industry. None of them did. And so there you go. So you have a man who went in there and tried to clean up, and then the same man created the mess. So how do you get rid of it? You know,
I often think that we go in and we provide solutions, and then we think we're the savior, and then there's a Napoleonic thing that goes on, like a weird shift in doing the greater good to doing what's good for me. And I don't know why. That's believing the own hype. Maybe it's a lack of God, whatever, but it does happen quite often, more often than not, and for powerful humans. And hopefully not that with education and knowledge in today's world, we have less of it, but who knows? But I think in your case, talk to me about New York City without vending in the city is just asking for, obviously it pushes, potentially everyone thinks it pushes people into restaurants, but what it does is it also takes away from tourism. It also takes away from taxi drivers or whoever will quick stop by the stands and get food. It takes away from tourists who seek that in New York City. So I think, you know, it's, and there is loyalty in business in the vending carts. And so let's go a little bit back a little bit. Talk to me about territorial wise. Is it very competitive cart wise, vendor to vendor, to try to hold on to space or get prime locations?
Well, what we should do is compare now to what it was 30 years ago.
Okay,
30
let's do
years
that.
ago, the industry had, like I said, there were a number of legitimate companies that had multiple carts on the street. And they would set their carts up in an area, and you know, everything works out of a commissary. So commissaries are spread out, where you keep the carts at night. And they would take areas and put it. And if a vendor went into a spot where another person was working 5 years, the person who's running that commissary where he's at would say, "Hey, listen, back away." You know, they're not going to bother where we're working, and we're not going to bother where they're working. So there was a little bit going on. There was always something where a new guy came in and there were nonsense for a little while. But if a vendor was on a location and you came and you worked next to him, all you're doing is taking half of his salary away from him, and you're not making enough to support yourself. So when most people don't realize that, and the vendors, when they come in, they think I can go anywhere I want and do whatever I want. And it's not that they can't. It's more of like a respect thing, and it's also an economical thing. You're going to go where you can't make a living anyway, so why are you going there? And because there was a limit on how many of us could be out there, there were so many hundreds and hundreds of locations where no one was at, that there wasn't a big deal. Now there's a big deal, because now you have what we consider the black market, and they control the city. They control all the lucrative locations, and they control the commissaries now. That's the worst thing. So if I say I want to go vend on a location and I'm in someone's commissary, and they want that location, well, tomorrow my push cart's got flat tires. I mean, it's more thuggery now. There's no respect anymore. It's just a question of, listen, we're going to grab as much money as we can from these guys, and that's it. So right now, that's what's happened. That's why I have to sleep where I am. I have to worry. I'm the only legitimate vendor around Central Park. I'm the only one that's legitimate, and I'm the one who's got to worry, because they have the power. If you want to vend on Central Park property right now, you have to pay these people money. It's extortion money. That's how bad it is. And everyone knows this. And they're not doing anything about it because they could care less. So yeah, that's the vending industry now. Go ahead and try and do what you want to do now. It just doesn't happen, because you don't have, when any of my vendors, new guy, they went out the first time or something, and they went into an area. The company owner that had carts and that, they would call me up, "Hey, Dan, we got a problem." I straightened it out in 3 minutes. And the same would happen if they did it to one of my guys. Now, the way I ran my business is I only leased people the push cart. So if you came to me and you said, "Dan, I want to sell hot dogs," I said, "Listen, we don't sell hot dogs, but we'll lease you a hot dog cart." And then you go. But now listen to me. I said, there are people working out there. Don't go jumping into people's locations. They have to make a living. They have families. And that creates a lot of problems when you do that. And everybody, it was pretty much, I'll tell you the truth, if I had one person complain in a year, that was a lot. And when you have 500 carts, that's a hell of a lot of cart. Even the health department didn't know how I was doing it. They would call me up and say, "How are you doing this, Dan? We don't hear about your company. We guys have 3 carts and we're down there every day, but you've got all these carts and nobody's creating problems." And I said, "It's simple. You're going into business. I'm only leasing you that cart for $5 a day. You want to screw that up? You're going into business and you can make $1,000 tomorrow, and all you have to do with me is $5." That was the magic of my business. And, no one else could do anything like that. And then, again, I always respected all the other companies and any vendor, even if you were by yourself. I would tell my guys, don't bother these people. They got families. You can't take away half of their salary, because they go out and you go out. So that's the changes that have happened. I guess I'm just repeating myself from before, but
no, not at all.
Deal. It's a big deal. Now you can't do that. Now, like I said, if you're a disabled veteran who wants to vend on Park's property, the privileges that I opened up for you, first you got to pay these guys now. And, they're not like me. Nobody's going to pull that crap with me. But that doesn't mean that I don't have to protect my spot, It's a sad thing, The city doesn't follow laws. They selectively enforce laws against certain people. You got to. The way I always tell people is, this is New York, and nothing surprises me. Nothing surprises me that certain inspectors are doing certain things, and the people that are benefiting from it are the bad guys. You know what I mean? Nothing's changed. It'll never change. it's just a sad state, and it's just something I got to just keep going and see where I can take this. Yeah.
Why keep going? What's it all about? Why stay in New York?
Well, now
Why stay?
it's survival. We
Yeah.
got back on our feet. It took a long time, but my daughter Elizabeth is a disabled vet, and I had to take the city to court to get her a permit to work, and that kind of opened things up. So, us being vets and with our disabilities and stuff, we were able to pool our resources and get back into a house. It took us a long time to do that. So, I got to keep a roof over my head. My wife is a stroke victim, so I have to go there. There's no last day of work for me. I'm always going to get up there every day and go. I'm at the Met 7 days a week. I left there early this morning just to come here. I wanted to come home, see my wife, and sit down and do this phone call.
Now, do you have someone that covers the cart for you also, and have someone that helps?
Today, we're right in front of the Metropolitan Museum.
Yep.
And Wednesdays they closed.
Ah.
So it worked out that you picked the Wednesday to do this. It really worked out. Or else I'd be sitting in my van doing it.
Yeah.
So, but the card is there. My card is there, and and because I'm there so long, the people, the security in the Met and the cops around here, they all know me. Everybody knows me. I mean, the people who live in the houses know me, so they keep an eye. And if anything happens, so one way or another, I get a phone call and I get right down there. But nothing's happened like that in quite a while, especially now with the winter. There's nobody making any money anyway, so why create problems? It's pretty tough now.
Talk to me about go.
Good. No, I'm just saying, in the Met, it's a prime location.
Yeah, it is a prime location.
It's a tremendous amount of tourism. We really have a good name, a good reputation, so people seek us out all the time.
Like, talk to me a little bit about building that reputation, marketing, advertising, customer service. Like, how do you do all that? Because we just talked about there's maybe 10,000 push carts in all of New York City. I don't even know.
No, there's nowhere near that number.
No, so whatever the number is, it's heavily competitive. So how do you sort of, from a customer standpoint or from a service standpoint, differentiate yourself?
Well, when I first started, I said, I'm going to do it. It's going to be like when I build a cart. I build a good cart, and I'm going to put out a good hot dog. And we went ahead and we went through every brand of hot dog in New York City that you could buy regularly. Not like a little meat market is making a hot dog for themselves. That'd be something where you can go and buy 40 pounds a day. It's consistent. And we went through everything. And we even went through, like, a new guy came in with what's called a snap dog. We gave him like a 6-month trial. And I was trying to help him, make a better hot dog. And he just wouldn't listen. He just kept, it's like any brand of hot dog out there. They made a hot dog and they never improved on that hot dog. But then we tried one hot dog, and to me, I had second doubts about it. And there was an a cappella group, if you know what they mean, a few guys singing in the corner, that kind of thing.
Absolutely love it.
We fed them every day. I mean, these guys were great. We fed them every day, and they came by for their hot dog. We gave them a hot dog, and they all came back and said, "Where'd you get this hot dog? This is great." And then I just started to watch, and I would see people come back for that second hot dog, that third hot dog. This is a good hot. I said, "Holy moly!" And we had the combination, because when we cook on a grill, and we're doing this song, we get it just right. We know when to get it away from the flame, put it on. We just I got myself, my daughter, my son-in-law, and one other guy, and we just know it. We know when that thing is just right, and we got our toppings, and we give people what they want. And it just worked. And so there's the magic to it, is giving the people, a good product. And I never looked at numbers. I never looked at I could buy a cheaper hot dog for 20 cents less a pound or something. That was never in the equation. And the second part about it is our pricing. We've always kept our prices lower than anyone else. I mean, for 18 years, we sold water for $1, and we had to jump it to $2 because things are getting out of hand for us, The food prices are never going to come down, and they're just going to keep going up. And we had to make a little different margins, but that's it. And we're nice to everybody. You come here, there's never been a situation where someone's been shortchanged or There's honest mistakes naturally happen, but if you go to other vendors, they actually charge you by how you look. So they have no price list, no menus. And if you look like a tourist, you're buying a $20 hot dog. It's that simple, and we would never do that to anybody. We got our price list, we got our prices, and that's it. That's what you get. Yeah. It worked. It worked. When I tell you we've got the name, we've got the name. It's simple as that. And that's only because we always do things right. Vendors, they got to make as much as they can, and we don't look at it that way. We're going to make money only because we're doing it right, and they're going to come back. And you could see it with all the illegal competition that we have during the season. You'll see a line in front of the Comets where they have no line. People know us. They know we're going to, So I guess when you constantly try and do the right thing, it comes back to you. If you do the wrong thing, that comes back to you too. But this.
Talk to me about the connectivity thing. You mentioned everyone, you talk to everyone, the neighborhood, the communication with individuals, that the importance of building relationships versus looking at everything as a transaction. Talk to me about that, because you obviously have that philosophy. You're very connected and grounded and spent time there and have the line and connected to the customers and the vendors and everything. Talk to me about the importance of connectivity.
We could do two things. We could tell you the city's constant attack on me to put me out of business.
Yeah.
Last day, they came and they scraped my permit off my card, stating that my permit didn't allow me to be in that location. Now, you have to remember, I own the oldest permit in New York City. I've been at that location for 18 years, and I said, this is a joke. I mean, what they were trying to get me to do something really stupid. I wouldn't do it. So that's the city end of it, of playing games. But the people, I mean, if you ever been in front of the Met, you walk across the street, those homes there, those apartments are $15, $20 million. We're not talking about nickel and dime change. And people came out of the house when they saw that they did it. One guy was enraged. I mean, we're talking about these very wealthy, powerful people, and what did they do this? Why did they do this to you, Dan? What's going on? I mean, they were enraged about it. One woman went to a councilwoman. They were absolutely upset that they did this to me, because they know that the city is always doing this. And that's the connection. I said I stay there, at night, and there's one woman who would every night come by, not say anything, and just make sure she would look in the window to make sure I was okay. I mean, come on, who does that for people? It was great, That's why I'm saying, that's the connection. They know me. The people walk their dogs. Hi, Dan. Good morning. I mean, that's what you want. That means more than money. That means that people have respect for each other. One very old woman came by. She says, "I'm so happy you're here because you're a veteran. I feel safer." Maybe that Marine thing does it. Who knows? But that's it. I mean, no other vendor in New York is that kind of you might have one customer who likes them, but we're talking about a lot of people here. And they come over to me all day long from all over the world just to shake my hand or take a picture. Because from some social media that you guys did for me, that everyone's done. And, that's a good feeling.
I think it's interesting. Abundance comes in a lot of different ways. It comes in a mansion in Greenwich, Connecticut, but it also comes in the form of fellowship and support in our relationships, which is what we're seeing here as well, right?
Yeah.
So, like, we've talked about why you continue going on and stuff like that. Did you have role models in life, or maybe in the military, individuals that instilled certain disciplines in you, maybe growing up, your parents? Like, where did sort of the ability to keep going? Life is rough, right? Life happens to all of us, but not everyone can keep going.
Well, if you read the book, I guess the biggest influence of my life was my grandmother. She was like the hierarchy of the family, and I basically slept in her bed for a few years, when I was small. And she put everybody to work. If God forbid anybody came to say hello, Dan, she'd put them to work. She'd find something for everybody to do. And she felt that if you did that, it would structure you. I guess that's how she looked at it. And it worked, I mean, all my uncles and aunts, all hardworking people, my cousins, they all went out and there was never any expectation of being something great. That was not part of it. There was an expectation for us that what you do is you have a job, you get to support your family. Make sure that you get a job that can take care of your family, and that's all. That was it. I guess she was the inspiration. As far as anything else, I had my uncles. They would all go in and out of business, try and do things, but none of them were really businessmen. But they gave it a shot. They did try, and like I said, they just worked. They would hustle, pick up side jobs, and then I fell right into that mold. As far as the military goes, that's a whole nother story. I pretty much found my place when I went into the Marines. I just fell into it. I was in great shape when I went in, so the physical end was nothing. The discipline part was tough because I'm a pretty stubborn guy sometimes. And, when I was in the Corps, it was nothing for them to punch you in the face, So that I had to get used to somebody trying to put their hands on me. But then what happened is once you get into the real Corps, you get by all the training and all that stuff, and you actually get into the Marine Corps. Then you start hooking up with really good men. Like in Vietnam, you hook up with that 4 or 5 men that we all have the same thing in mind. We're all going to fix these helicopters, and then we're going to get in there and fly. And that's different. It's a commodity that I can't explain this to you. It's just something, I only kept in touch with one other Marine, a guy in the book, John Booley. And we didn't see each other for 45 years. And he convinced me to go to a reunion. And I said, come on, John, you socialize. If I knew 4 guys, that was a lot. I'm not the kind of guy who talks to people, no, you got to come. Now, listen, 45 years we didn't see each other. And he has one of these little planes, a 2-seater plane. He says, I'm going to pick you up and we're going to go to Florida. Okay. So I meet him at the airport, and first thing he says to me, he says, what happened to your muscles? Because when I was young, I was really well built. And I said, come on, John, we're old men now, And the second thing out of his mouth was, what was the name of that movie? And I told him, now, when we were in Vietnam, we all went together. And within our first week there, we put up this plywood wall. We're going to watch a movie, and it was Bolero. It was with Raquel Welch. So you would think, what the hell? We're only in Vietnam a few days that we go crazy over seeing a girl. But anyway, as soon as her face came on, and the guy started, hoop, and holler and all that, we got hit with rockets, and the rockets landed not too far from us, and it took down about 60 to 80 guys. And that's something you never forget, I mean, that was baptism by fire. I mean, we were getting hit the first day we were there, but this was a bad one. This was right in the middle, and it stuck with him, and it stuck with me and everybody else that was there at the time. So for him to say what was the name of that movie, I mean, it brought us right back to where we were. We just picked up our conversation after 45 years. So, if there was one guy in the world that I would trust with my life, it would be this guy. We chewed the same dirt, and we have the same mindset. We were there for a purpose. We weren't there to do something stupid, that kind of frames you too. It means that loyalty is beyond anything. And, and you don't find that, even your closest friends, you find out about loyalty when things get really tough. But these guys, they were there. They were no nonsense. And then after that, it was just carrying what I had, as far as working, or in the service, reaching rank. And when I got back out into the real world, and I just looked at how things were going on later on. It was really rough the first year when I got out because we were not welcome at home. But then I kind of planted my feet, and then I started saying, you got to start doing something, And then naturally, I found the right girl. I married her, and that was it. Now I got a wife, and I got to take care of this woman, and I got to do what I was supposed to do all my life, what I was taught to do. Go find yourself a good job and do this. And I did, And then one thing led to another.
Humility is a big part of your story. I feel like there's been humbling moments and moments of stubbornness being broken down. Let's talk about this, the importance of humility in our journey to get to where you are, to get to a point in life where our trajectory is more peaceful, even though we may be at war 24/7.
If anyone ever did something for me, I'm humbled. I don't expect anyone to say thank you to me. I'm doing what I think is right, and and when someone does do something, I think in the book I talk about one customer of mine who was Orthodox Jewish, and they were taking away my business, and the way they were doing it is they were just saying everything. I mean, it was all nonsense. They were doing everything that they can, bringing people out of the woodwork, saying things about me. It was all lies. And this young guy comes up to me, and I said that the shop was closed. I had to lay off all my men, all these guys that I taught to be sheet metal workers. And I was just sitting there day after day, saying, not knowing what to do, And he comes up and he says, when he came in, I said, look, I'm sorry, and I can't help you no more. He says, I didn't come here for you to help me. I came here to help you. He says, Dan, we're in the street. We hear what they're saying. We know they're lying. We can't do anything to say anything to them, And he says, would you want to come and speak to my rabbi, because he's a really good man? And I didn't, I just couldn't do it. But I said, look at this guy. He didn't have to come up here to help me. My God, that kind of knocked me to my knees that someone would do something like that, So there's the humbling part, And I still, I'd still try and help anybody I could, no matter what position I was in, And I've helped people who did bad things to me, after they apologized for doing it. I said, okay, you apologize is good enough, and we'll move on. Let's forget about it, Yeah, but that was probably one of the biggest things in my life that kind of shook me, because I was in such a deep depression that I did everything right, and they took everything I owned, and I just couldn't get out of that. I just couldn't understand it. But what are you gonna do? You live in a crazy world.
Yeah, I can understand that, doing everything right, and then the government changes, or you make an enemy there, and they come after you pretty hard, take away a lot. They use force for sure.
Oh, yeah, sure.
And they use intimidation and fear for sure. That is part of the game. Powerful people use power.
Book, what they did to those poor women in Georgia, with Giuliani, they did all those lies and everything. Did the same to me. I got the calls. We're gonna do this to you and that to you. I got to the point where I had to actually get my family away for a few days, where I didn't know if one of these crazies, or to me, I knew who was doing it. They were just cops trying to get points with Giuliani. But you don't know. You don't know what to expect. You start to get a little paranoid, But, once the family was away, then I was in my own setting. Now I'm in control. I don't have to worry about anybody getting hurt, and I can take care of myself. So, then I felt better. But then after a few days, nothing happened. The phone call stopped. I said, all right. It was just a bluff, just to intimidate me. And it worked. I got to be honest, it worked. Because I wasn't worried about me. I was worried about my wife.
Family, yeah. And then you do crazy things trying to protect your family sometimes. Sometimes.
I didn't do anything crazy. I kind of, close the doors on the fort. If they're going to come, let them come.
Yeah, I agree.
I went out and did something stupid,
Yeah. I think one of the things that probably, and I have no time in the military, probably prepares you for is crisis management like that. In a way, you're dealing with, well, you said it, baptism under fire, but there's probably a different sense of crisis management related to the civilian human, such as myself.
Well, to be honest with you, if there's something happens and let's say you and I were there and you haven't had my experience, you stand behind me is what I could say. I know exactly, I see every situation, unless it's like a shock situation. When we were going into on missions, we knew what to expect when we were going. So there's no surprises, and all your training just comes into thing, and it just comes out. I mean, you're like a machine. Everybody around you knows what to do. We all do what we have to do. But if you get a surprise where you get hit with a rocket or a mortar, there's no defense to that. It comes down in your lap, and that is when your body takes over for self-preservation. That's what happened that first time with the rockets when we got them. We went into let's protect us. Your mind takes over. You can't control what you're doing. You're just going to try and save yourself. And it takes a few seconds before you get control of yourself. We got hit. There was a bunker. I don't think it was 40 feet from us. I never made it to the bunker. When I got there, I started to control, my thoughts, and I just turned around and started going help the wounded guys, that if it was to happen today, I'm pretty sure I'd fall right back in that mode,
Yeah, it's I don't know if it's training or same as an athlete, like I can still juggle soccer balls as well as I did when I was playing as a kid or when I would go to Europe or whatever else I did, and having that, chosen lifestyle for sure. Even as an entrepreneur now, I mean, you probably sense this as an entrepreneur now, you can read situations differently with more experience and training.
Oh, sure.
And so I've got to imagine it's the same in the military.
Going to happen.
Go ahead, say that again.
I know it's, I gave you a story that happened, I think, last year. We were on, I think, 52nd Street, and there was a welding supply, so I had to pick up some stuff. And I had me and one of the guys that works with me. And we drove about a block, and we're stuck for some reason, the cars in front of us stopped and know what was going on. And I saw two young guys fighting. There's a high school not close. I figured, these two kids, fighting. And then it turns out that one is a kid fighting a sanitation worker. And the sanitation worker was huge. This is a big guy. And I said to my guy, I said, this kid better run. He's in a lot of trouble. And instead of running, he goes into his backpack. And as soon as he went in his backpack, I knew he was going for a gun. And my first reaction was to go and get the gun. And I couldn't get out the door of the car because the car in front of me panicked, and he came to my side.
Oh, geez.
I couldn't open my door. But my reaction was to go and get that gun. And Marines are taught when you hear a sound that when there's a shot fired, you go for the shot. We don't run from the shots. We go after the shot. And it just came in. And the guy with me, he says, Dan, he says, I says, I can't get out of the car. I'm trying to open the car. I'm hitting the other car, And then as soon as I got out, I ran into the guy. Because the guy, he ran, and I was able to get to the guy and see where, he shot him in his butt. So it wasn't that bad, but it's bad enough, But there you go. Your training kicks in, and you got to do what you have to do.
Yeah, I just it's like one of those instinct things. It's a good example. Thank you, Dan, for sharing that and being so honest and authentic in your experiences and even in your book and stuff like that. Talk to me a little bit about family importance, involvement in the business. You mentioned how close you are to your wife and your daughter. I believe you have a granddaughter. Maybe you have more than one daughter. I'm not sure. But talk to me about the family and the involvement in your business, in your life, and that importance to you, because you obviously are a provider and a protector in the biblical sense. I'll just extrapolate and put that out there, but you obviously care a lot about your family, and your family cares a lot about you, and a lot of support for one another. So talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, just to bring it into the business, and the first push cart I built in the back of a house that we lived in the Bronx, and my wife helped me build it. That was the beginning. And as we went, we grew as the company grew. My wife would take my two youngest daughters in a playpen and put it in the office. And if somebody walked in, there would be my wife, the two kids, and she'd be on the phone until she had to leave to pick up my older daughters. So I have four daughters, and every one of them has been involved in the business in one way or the other. When my oldest daughter graduated college, she came, she worked in the office. My second daughter, she would do things on her end. Then Elizabeth was the third. She went into Marines. She followed me into the Marines. She came out. And when she came out, she said, I'm going to help you in front of the Met. And then my youngest daughter, she's with the social media thing that you guys doing that I know nothing about. And, my second daughter's still trying to sell the book, get out there and sell this book. And all of them in one way or another, it's just a circle, Since my wife's had a stroke, she's pretty much, she can't help us anymore.
Yeah, I'm
But,
sorry about that.
I told my daughters, how's it going on the book? How's this going over here? And that's it. My Elizabeth and my younger daughter Angela actually work the cards with us, when Angela can, because she has 4 kids too, So that's tough. But they're there, they're there. Our new venture is going to be to try and put our own hot dog out, And what I noticed, like I said before, is that all the brands that are out there, they've never gotten better. They've probably gotten worse, They never tried to improve on it. So we're working with a company now to try and do it. And I put it in my daughter Angela's lap. I said, I took it to the company. We sat down. I said, I don't want you to say anything. This is the first time we're in a meeting for business. Just listen to how people talk. And you're going to come out with whether or not they're lying to you, if they're being sincere with you. Those are the impressions I want from you, And at the end of the meeting, one of the company heads on the other side, he says, I know what you're doing, Dan, but who's this young lady? I said, well, she's listening. I told her not to open her mouth at the end. She's listening to everything you're saying. And from her expressions, you sold us on everything. We know we're dealing with good guys, So that's how the family is. And they're going to, in my end of it, I would love for this thing to kick off so that they can build on it. I'm not a young kid anymore. I'm 75. And, I know I got some more years good for me, but, they have to build on something themselves one way or the other. And it's always going to be the family. Always.
I love it.
And we come from an Italian house. If you know anything about Italian house, you can fight and kill each other, but you can't let anybody say anything about you. They're always tight.
You're only allowed to say things about each other. No one outside's allowed to say anything about it.
That's right. Yeah. That's what we used to say in the Marine Corps. You can curse the Corps, but only a Marine can curse the Corps.
Yeah. I love it. I mean, you have some time left. I want to make sure I give you some time to talk about anything that you want to talk about or share with the audience as well that maybe we didn't cover. Dan, and I have a question or two more, but I want to make sure I give you enough time to share with the audience anything that you might want to share that's in your heart that you might feel that helps others or anything like that.
Well, I think we see it every day now, what's going on in the politics of the world. If somebody says something, don't take it as face value. I mean, people who are in a position could say something about you and destroy your life. And it's all lies. And people who go for that. What they did to me, I said, we couldn't even believe it. I mean, friends wouldn't even talk to us. They didn't know what was going on. They didn't know what to believe. I mean, what's this guy doing on the newspaper every week? Why is he on TV and all this? So they get afraid, and you got to stand. If they came after a friend of mine who I knew was a good man, I'd be standing right next to that guy, and I'd support that person. I wouldn't listen to this nonsense. And you just can't follow like a sheep and follow people. You gotta stand up. And if you see somebody being abused, you gotta stand up and protect that person. I saw the vets being abused. I stood up. I was given the option. One deputy mayor said, listen, if you don't back away from helping the vets, we're going to bankrupt you. And I said, you do what you got to do. And they did. They bankrupted me. So, okay. But I still did what I had to do. You got to stand up. You can't let people walk over you. Just if you believe in something, you gotta. I've got grandchildren. They have to say that my grandfather was a stand-up guy. He didn't back away from anybody. But I would never say anything about anyone. Never, because I wouldn't know what as far as disparaging someone else, unless I knew that the guy was really doing the wrong thing. I wouldn't go by what another person said. Maybe that's it. I told all my grandchildren that you do one thing, you do the right thing. And don't worry what they do to you for doing it. You just do the right thing. And then you'll turn around and it'll all come out good for you, And that's it. That's my only advice to my grandchildren. And so far, knock on wood, they're doing pretty good. The kids, I got 14 grandchildren, and some of them are already adults, and they're okay. They're going in the right direction. So that's what the people should listen to.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, the depth of your family, I didn't even totally understand or even have the knowledge of it, but I'm totally amazed by the support, the unity, the camaraderie. It is an Italian family in a lot of ways, growing up in one myself. The hopes, the dreams, the things like that, like, how do you look at that? Have they changed over the years, the way you look at hopes and dreams, and sort of formulate them based on what you've been through, the ups and downs, based on this abundance you have in your family? Has that sort of changed?
Not a family. No, I don't think so. I've always been an optimistic guy. Things are going to be better tomorrow, that kind of thing. When they went ahead and removed my decal last year, and they wouldn't let me work for almost a month. I haven't gone to court for that yet. I don't go until this month. And once that's done, that's going to set a whole chain of events of going to court. And what I'm hoping to get out of it is the truth. I've been in front of judges quite a bit, and judges always protect the government, Even when you win, they put something in there for the government to use against you the next day. And I'm just hoping that for once I can get to say what happened, show them where they're wrong, show them what the city is doing that's abusive to people and lies, out and out lies, and get someone to say, okay, we're going to straighten this out. That would be so nice. That would be it. If I could actually get someone to understand all that they've done and what they're still doing, that would be enough for me. I've done everything else I can. I got, as far as the vets, I got them back to work in Midtown Manhattan. I got permits for them and opened up a lot of locations for them, but that's not enough. The other end of it is not to be selfish. I want people to know the truth about me. That would be enough for me. If people said, Dan, you really got it. They really did a bad job to you. And some of the people who did it, they're very well-known people. If I want them to, if they see me, to put their head down, not be able to look me in the eye, knowing that what they did was so wrong and why they did it. I can't even imagine what they were promised or were given to do what they did to me. That would set the record straight for me.
Yeah, the motivation there, I don't know that is totally, it's just one of those things that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. Well, it does. You don't know what's behind it. You see, in a disabled veteran case selling food, I can go on any block in New York City. And real estate board, that's the power of the city. It's not, if you went to Texas, it would be oil. But in New York City, it's real estate. They control the city. They control the mayor. They control the politicians. And one of their selling points was the people who want to rent space in their building is that it's a vendor-free block. And they would raise the price of the square foot. So they made a lot of money by kicking the disabled vets off the street. So that was the motivation. And when I went ahead and got them back on the street, oh my God, look at the enemies I made. It was unbelievable. So there was a reason why they did it, and it was money. That was all it was money. And the fact that they didn't want to see any cripples in front of their buildings.
Oh, that's interesting.
Trump said that. He didn't want any cripples in front of his building. And he's the one who pushed the whole thing. You hear, come on. All you got to do is not to just make it focus on him, but isn't he the one who said he didn't want any cripples at the parades? They don't look good. These are the kind of, that's who he is. If any vet thinks that this is a pro-vet president, they're crazy. They're lost in their imagination. And that's what it was. That's what I was up against. And how do you beat that? How do you beat that? What they spend for lunch in one day, I know, making 10 years. Come on. So you just couldn't do it. And to me, it didn't matter how, to me, even when I was a kid, it didn't matter how big you were. If I had to fight, I had to fight. And these guys were tremendous. It was a David and Goliath thing. Only this time David got killed.
Yeah, Yeah,
Everybody.
it doesn't end so well for David in the Bible either,
Well,
you know. So
sometimes doing the right thing isn't the right thing. I
yeah,
guess. I
exactly.
mean, you do it and it comes back. Yeah. I mean, sometimes I think, if I would have went along and helped them abuse the veterans, could I live with myself? Sure, I'd have my business, but how could I do it? I mean, I carried enough wounded and dead Marines. How could you do it? I don't think I could live with myself. No, and knowing that I would abuse these guys, and that's what they wanted. I wouldn't do it. Couldn't do it. Thank God I did what I did. You know, and as hard as it was for us, I mean, it was really, really hard. I mean, I had a woman just had a stroke, and me and her are living in a van. That's pretty bad. I got to be honest with you. But you know, God is everything turns around. What goes around comes around. Who's hiring lawyers? Rudy Giuliani. He's got 900 lawyers that won't even work for him anymore because he doesn't pay them. So
Because
I
he's
guess
bankrupt.
that's
Yeah.
karma. I guess
Yeah. I think that there's the thing as humans or as a general audience or as we work our way, especially as entrepreneurs in the world, we have a lot of influence, a lot of impact. And I've dealt with governments in many different states, sometimes in different countries, and federal government. The thing about it is it doesn't, the decency comes down to the human being. And we really have to look at what historically has been the pattern of that human we're voting for. Can a human improve or change or become a better human? For sure. But I think we need to look at the pattern. Is there a pattern of that behavior? Is it something that happens regularly in their life? Do they have the ability to transform? If that's the case, yes, then they can transform in a position of politics to something greater. If it's not a pattern and historically there are things that I've said, then I think we need to make a better decision. It doesn't matter fundamental beliefs or not. The ability to carry out those beliefs is what we need to look at. Do they have the ability to carry out the character that they claim to have? And we need to look at that as voters in every country. If we have the ability to vote for our representatives, for our police chiefs, anyone we vote for, if we do our due diligence and we are truly a citizen of our governments and of the world and even of heaven, if we believe in spirituality, biblically even, we have to do our job to pick the best candidate based on character that will lead humanity the best, not necessarily always on agreeability. That's something that we lose a little bit. And I think because of that is why things sway so badly in politics right now, as it is a popularity contest. Maybe it's always been, but I think more than ever, it's about that and extremism versus what candidates do we have and who's shown a history of actually doing the right thing when they're in a position that matters, when they're being challenged or temptations there or a sinful nature might emerge. What do they do then? What does that history look like? Not from a newspaper or whatever and one source and this channel versus that. Truly doing our due diligence. It is our responsibility to do that. But that's a whole other topic. And from a political standpoint, I think that power sometimes is hard to deal with, but we have the ability as individuals, entrepreneurs, individual citizens, however we want to look at it, to fight back. We have the ability to do that. We have the ability to rally people and lead. We did it as entrepreneurs and we do it in our lives. So it's okay. And I think one of the reasons that I wanted to have Dan on the show is to demonstrate that abundance doesn't always come in the way that we think it should, but when it does come, and the legacy that we could create and the impact we create from our lives, that's what Dan's doing. He's made impact in the lives of the veterans. He's doing it in the lives of the vendors and the people that are actually following the rules in New York City. He's trying to and bringing light to something that's an urbanization problem in urban possibly everywhere, where if we don't take care of the small things and hold true to the truth in the small things, the laws, the right vendors, the right subway pay, the jumping the subway, taking care of spray paint when it happens, what happens is a deterioration of society or culture or urban environment in this case. And so this is not only something that's going to affect New York City now, this is something that will have a declining effect based on we can't be anti-business, anti-legit business and okay with underground business and passing an eye. It's not okay. And we continue to do that as governments. We almost give less to those who follow the rules and are willing to do the paperwork, because it's easier for us in government to just ignore the ones that are not doing it, because why? They just create more paperwork for us if we go after them, and they create more paperwork if we hold to them honestly. And I've heard it numerous times throughout my life as an entrepreneur, whether it's health inspections or government approval or whatever, and they don't want more and they need less, so just let them be. And it's just a lazy mentality, and a lazy mentality leads to a lazy society, which leads to a deteriorating society. And I don't mean lazy as in like I'm not working. I mean lazy as the inability for the individual citizen to stick up for what's right.
Yeah,
so
I pretty much agree with everything you just said.
And so, I just wanted to anchor that. I'm going to put Dan's book back on here on the notes for everyone. If you're interested in being on the show, please also follow the link below, and we'll get you on the show if you're a food, beverage, hospitality, farming entrepreneur. I might love to have you guys on. I will put all of Dan's social media and things that he has that I've got from him before the show on the notes as well. I'm going to ask Dan to be back on. So I'm going to send him some more questions. I know there's probably going to be some questions from the audience. So I'll make sure this episode's out, because I know people are going to respond and stuff like that. So I'm going to invite Dan back on to continue to talk about his book. That'll give me time to fully read his book and us to have a more in-depth conversation for sure. Anyone in the audience, it is worth looking at this in anywhere that you are. If we aren't aware of it and we don't have knowledge of it and we don't shine light on it and we leave it in the darkness allows it to grow. It doesn't mean we need to do anything or fight a battle or be the warrior, but it's okay to be the shiner of light on a dark situation. And in how we do that in a graceful way and in a way that is meant for positivity, or something else I like about Dan, always being opportunistic or positive, is a good thing, because life is hard. And that's the way, as I keep saying on the show, the cookie crumbles, because I just think it's so spot on. We don't have any control over it, but how we react is how we have control. And what Dan's proven and shown to an audience, it's not a short-term thing. Character redemption, when it's been torn down unjustly, takes time, obedience, discipline, suffering to get to this salvation point where the tide does change for you now and later. And as entrepreneurs, that's important. It may feel like you're suffering now or fighting for a future, but it does matter and it will impact people. And so thank you, Dan, for fighting for veterans. I appreciate what you're doing for legitimacy of business. Free market systems only work if there are rules still. If it's complete freedom, we're talking about a pirate ship rolling into New York City in this case, and then ignoring the pirates, but yet we invited the pirate ship in. Oh, there's no pirates. Everything's fine. There's no one doing anything, but yet the pirate ships park right there. So It leads to piracy when you invite the pirates in, period. And that's a dismantling of society norms, and that's a dismantling of structure and infrastructure that allows us to have the freedoms that we have. But it takes structure in order to have freedoms. That's not control. That's not over That's just structure. That's just guidelines. And when we don't hold to them and we allow freedom to be what would be more called chaos, they're not the same thing, then it disrupts things. It allows more, people aren't making more money. Everyone's making less, whether they realize it or not. If everyone stuck to a system and did it, there's enough money to go around in New York City. But instead, they squabble over it now, or we play that game. And just so you know, 4 years ago when I was in New York City, being in Denver, I probably don't look like a New Yorker anymore, probably don't talk like a New Yorker anymore after all the time there. We went through the little hot dog thing where I went and bought a hot dog. I paid $3 for it. At the time, my stepdaughters and my significant other went up. They wanted to charge them $6 each. So they know, and that's not a legitimate way of doing business. I don't want to go to New York City and feel like I'm going to go there as a tourist and be hustled, right? We don't want that. If you're going to hustle me, entertain me a little bit, give me something more to pay for. But that is something that does go on, and it is something that's stuck in my mind. So when you said it, I could feel it emotionally because it did feel like someone was trying to take advantage. That is what that is. That's not an opportunistic moment to take more money out of someone. That's greed, period. So I just wanted to emphasize that as well with everyone, that I do know that it goes on. And the only way to do it is make it known, voice up about it, talk about it. If you see it, it's okay to put something like that in social media if it's truth with a capital T. If someone hustled someone, charge your friend $3, but use $6, it's okay to mention it or do a review. That's why we have reviews online. But anyway, that's my soapbox for today. Well, maybe not, since I have 2 more podcasts to record. But Dan, I just wanted to say again, thank you. I appreciate it. I'm going to let you close this out. Is there anything based on what I just said you have a comment about or want to talk about, and then I'll get us closed out?
Well, I think we pretty much covered everything as far as, a person's character. I mean, your character is basically your nature too. You got to push to do the right thing. I mean, that's how character comes. You get low integrity, you stand by your views. If you're wrong, you admit you're wrong. That's a big deal. People don't want to admit when they've done something wrong, but you have to. If you come to the conclusion that you might have harmed somebody by doing the wrong thing, you got to make it up to them. You got to turn it around. And that's character. That's showing who you are, who you really are. And you actually you have to keep, I guess, showing to example. It never stops. You are who you are, and it's going to come out in everything you do. And so there's really not much more to say. I mean, you really covered it pretty good.
Yeah, you covered it pretty good.
I'm glad.
Go ahead.
I was glad that you said about the $6 hot dog. Everyone knows out there I'm not making it up. But so I see it much worse than that. But that's the way it is. That's it. And I'm
going to tell everyone out there, because I probably have many carts or food trucks listening in here. The locals know, and eventually the locals talk and they boycott your local stand. And when their friends and family come into town to visit them, they tell them about it. And eventually you're going to get little bighorned, where you're just going to get slaughtered or should I say more like starved out, because eventually it is going to be found out. It may take decades, but it will ultimately drag you down. It does happen. And I did live in New York City for quite a while and do a lot of business there. And of a town that talks and word of mouth matters, that is the place. The taxi cabs know, the Uber drivers know, the DoorDash drivers know, people know where bad vending is done and where bad humans exist. And it may take time, but through attrition that the person will eventually suffer. It's not always, and it does take time, but I believe that truly. So if you're out there doing it, you got to pay the piper at some point. I've seen it. I've lived it myself. When you avoid doing the right thing or trying to skate by or take a shortcut or screw people over or just go after the dollars, it will come back and it will be tenfold. There is no doubt. So just something to be aware of. Believe me or not, it's up to you. And Dan, again, thank you. Thank you, everyone in the audience. I love you guys. Thank you for all the support, all the love. Thank you for sharing the shows, commenting, liking, subscribing, following on social media, following the guests, interacting with the guest, all of those things. One of the great things that this podcast lends itself to is the interactions between the guests. And so one of the things that being on a guest does allow everyone to do is interact with each other. And we do set up events to do that. And I try to encourage that and connect people too. So everyone asks about that. What happens afterwards? Well, I generally just start connecting people because that's who I am. That's why I do the show. That's how I found success as an entrepreneur. That's how I grow humans. I'm not the only tool, but I am really good at connecting people and finding people the right tools. So that is part of being on the podcast and ways that why people come on for 4, 5, 6, because in between there is a lot of relationship there. There is a lot of time with me spending with entrepreneurs with no gain other than hoping they grow and spread positivity and good in the world. That's it. That's the point. Is because I want to leave this place better than I found it. And it means addressing things like we talked about in this show. It also means addressing things that are inside of us that maybe we're not dealing with. So as entrepreneurs, I encourage everyone to just take a step back here. What are the battles we need to fight for the greater good? What are the battles we need to fight for the growth of our business? And what are the battles we need to fight for our family? And maybe they're not battles, maybe they're long-term wars, and we have to prepare for those or read or educate ourselves or in order to grow our business, which will feel like hardship and growth and a battle moving forward. We just have to prepare and train ourselves for those situations and do it now. So, because if we want what the future has to offer and what our dreams have to offer, we have to prepare in order to receive them. We will not get anything or be allowed to handle anything that we're not truly able to handle. It just doesn't work that way. So thank you everyone for listening in. I love you guys. Follow us, like I said, and we're out.